Welcome back everyone, this is Classic Crafts, where we look at the nuts and bolts of making a unique top-tier ship just like those you find in the Ship Expo. Here you'll learn a bevy of useful tricks for making your ships look and move great, as well as some of the core principles all players need to make ships that sparkle. Today's episode features the flying phenomenon that is the Red Baron, originally created by Jack One. Like the famous red aircraft piloted by the titular Baron von Richthofen, the Red Baron in Sea of Craft is a triplane, an aircraft that was once celebrated for its impressive lift. Our Red Baron certainly has better lift than any of the rivals in the Ship Expo. Today's episode will be looking at how to make a working triplane in Sea of Craft, focusing on how to achieve lift and how to make an aircraft look the part in a game based on water. Fortunately for us, the shape of a triplane body is perfect for making an efficient flying machine in Sea of Craft. That's realistic water physics for you. We want our plane to have a long, thin fuselage that balances out the physical properties of the wings, which we'll build later on. We're starting with the fuselage because our most significant scale factor is the helm, which we want to conceal inside so it looks realistic. A ship's helm does not belong on top of an aircraft. We've built our fuselage to roughly match the proportions of Richthofen's original triplane. Now it's time to build the wings. The wingspan should be similar to the length of the fuselage. We don't want wings that are too narrow or they'll look wrong, and we equally don't want wings that are too wide such that they compromise forward momentum. We need 3 levels of wings, the uppermost of which will be protruding far above the fuselage. This design drags the centre of gravity of the aircraft upwards, and we'll discuss the significance of this factor later on. Ironically, we won't be making our propellers using propellers, for the most part. Instead, we'll be mounting big old greatswords to a manual rotator held in place by a passive rotator. In this game version, the passive rotator isn't powerful enough to turn the propeller consistently. Let's not forget all the little details that make this aircraft really look the part. Build cannons to the wings and fuselage to give our triplane some firepower. These cannons work really nicely when the craft is at the peak of its lift. We've also got these curious little weapons behind the propeller. Build ball and chains to splitters set to maximum separation force. These weapons are no doubt a homage to the mounted machine guns featured on World War I fighter planes. We've got a nice pair of wheels underneath the fuselage joined on by springs. These wheels have no thrust, but they might help you out in a pinch, especially if you find yourself beached. In direct mimicry of the original Red Baron's triplane, we've got a nice fin structure at the back, which is composed of a medium active wheel and a couple of passive bearings. The pulleys we're mounting to the wings are purely cosmetic. Finally, these little torches on top not only look great in themselves, but they produce little trails of flame that resemble wingtip vortices for a little added touch of realism. And finally, the all-important lift factor. How do we make this triplane fly? At the moment, the only ways to generate thrust in Sea of Craft are in water and on land, with the exception of recoil from artillery. This means we need to do all our heavy lifting in the water. Our body has low vertical drag thanks to its shape, so now we just need to add something to generate that thrust. The answer is propellers in huge numbers. We want as many vertically aligned propellers as we can fit to the bottom of the aircraft. You can now see why it's ideal that our top wing is dragging the centre of gravity up. It means our propellers go deeper into the water and are thus able to generate more momentum before they reach the surface. Now all we have to do is set the key bindings to our preferred lifting and diving keys. As for our forward and sideways movement, we're going to need the help of quite a few propellers. Most of our turning is done with the help of these propellers on the front of the lowermost wing. Pay attention to the key bindings, as these propellers are oriented the opposite way round to usual. And that's it. We now have a working triplane, just as ready to take flight as it is to set sail. Baron von Richthofen would be so proud. But just as the triplane was a brief entry in the story of aviation, so history tells us this is not the end for aeroplanes in Sea of Craft. Can you build an aircraft in Sea of Craft that outstrips the Red Baron? Here's hoping the next generation of sea captains takes to the skies with just as much enthusiasm. Thanks very much everyone, see you next time.